Walter dug up his grandson's grave and made my son wear his burial suit. When I begged him to stop, he smiled and said, "Christian was always a night owl." I didn't say a word. That was 8 months ago. Yesterday, Cody sang in the winter choir concert, and Walter's niece cried the whole time without explaining why. My husband died in Afghanistan, leaving me and 8-year-old Cody to start over in the suburbs. Our neighbor Walter, in his 60s, noticed Cody. He watched him build a birdhouse and mentioned his grandson Christian died of cancer the previous year, the same age as Cody. When Walter offered to teach Cody woodworking, I accepted immediately. Cody hadn't smiled in months. Walter became everything we needed. Woodworking led to fishing trips, homework help, school events. His wife Jane knitted Cody sweaters and insisted on weekly dinners. Cody's grades improved, nightmares stopped. Walter mentioned Cody held tools exactly like Christian, laughed at identical jokes. Other parents envied us constantly. The PTA president wished her kids had such a devoted grandfather figure. When Walter volunteered to drive Cody to scout meetings at Christian's old troop, I felt like I could breathe again. He'd get upset when Cody played with other kids, mentioning Christian was shy too. My mom complained when I didn't call daily. This felt similar. Was I really going to question free childcare from someone who genuinely cared? Walter started calling Cody Christian occasionally, immediately correcting himself. He gave Cody some of Christian's clothes. When he suggested Cody get Christian's haircut, Jane cried about how much it would help him heal. Was I denying a grieving grandparent his comfort? Walter began picking Cody up from school without confirming. The school allowed it, as he was on the approved list. Other moms envied my village. Cody started using phrases I didn't teach him. Walter gave him Christian's engraved watch. When I tried setting boundaries, Cody asked why I was being mean to Grandpa Walter. Neighbors mentioned Walter following the bus for safety, checking the playground during recess. My sister said I was projecting grief, pushing away help. My therapist suggested I was jealous of their bond. Walter called Cody Christian more frequently, showed him photos of Christian while narrating them as Cody's memories. He enrolled Cody in Christian's old art class. When confronted by others, Jane explained Walter got confused. Old age, grief, medication. Then I found Cody's self-portrait with Christian's features. Signed, Cody Christian. Walter had been telling Cody bedtime stories about when you were younger, presenting Christian's memories as Cody's forgotten past. Cody started mixing up his history, mentioning Christian's events as his own. I saw their photo album. They'd replaced Christian's face with Cody's in every picture. Birthdays, vacations, medical photos. My sister said grief made people do strange things. Then, one night, Cody's bed was empty at 2 a.m. I woke up with a horrible feeling, unable to find my son, and seeing Walter's truck on from his driveway, I nearly broke their door by banging on it. When Jane answered, I demanded to know where her husband and my son were. Jane kept insisting Christian was at swimming practice. She seemed almost senile. I called the police and they tracked Walter to the cemetery. One of the deputies knew Walter and remembered it was Christian's death anniversary. They found Cody with his head shaved like Christian's chemo cut, patches of air left uneven. He was wearing Christian's burial suit, the one Walter had forced Cody to help dig up. Walter was showing Cody medical files, holding bottles with Christian's medications, explaining treatment schedules. When the cops finally grabbed him, he fought the police, screaming about not losing his grandson again. Cody sobbed, asking if he was dying like Christian. Walter's workshop had become overrun with journals, detailed plans to restore Christian's memories, medical equipment ready to recreate Christian's exact treatments. Photos showed Cody's face edited onto Christian's. I got Cody's in therapy and we moved 3 towns over. But Walter's letters still arrived from psychiatric detention, addressed to Christian, containing details he couldn't know. Cody swore he had no contact with a man. Then Jane died last month, calling for her grandson. The day after, Cody's new teacher said he had a special visitor up front that was taking him home early. The teacher didn't know that Cody didn't have a grandfather. Cody didn't know it wasn't me. I raced through traffic while calling the school repeatedly. The secretary finally answered on my 4th attempt. She confirmed what I already knew. Walter had signed Cody out 2 hours ago. 2 hours. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel tighter. The psychiatric facility called while I was halfway to the school. The director explained how Walter had manipulated the situation during Jane's funeral arrangements. Staff confusion during shift changes. A sympathetic orderly who'd given him a contraband phone. They were reviewing all security protocols, but that didn't help me now. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered immediately. Walter's voice came through calm and measured. He greeted me as Christian's mother. In the background, I heard Cody asking where they were going. His voice sounded wrong, slurred, and confused. My stomach dropped. Walter explained he was bringing Christian home. The medications in the juice were just to help with the transition. Then he mentioned something that made my blood run cold. He'd been off his psychiatric medications for weeks, planning this since Jane died. I pulled into the school parking lot and ran inside. The principal met me with security footage. Walter had arrived in a suit, looking completely normal. The new receptionist hadn't questioned the approved pickup. Nobody thought twice about a grandfather collecting his grandson. Back in my car, I called Mrs. Chen while checking Cody's phone location. She mentioned seeing Walter at the grocery store yesterday. He'd looked so normal in his suit. She hadn't thought anything strange about it. The phone tracker showed movement toward our old neighborhood. I had seconds to decide. Call the police, who might escalate the situation dangerously, or track Walter myself using Cody's phone signal. The dot on my screen kept moving steadily. I chose pursuit. My phone buzzed with a text. A photo appeared. Cody wearing Christian's white communion outfit. His eyes looked glazed, unfocused. Another text followed immediately. Then another. Walter was documenting everything. At a red light 3 blocks from the old neighborhood, I spotted Walter's truck ahead. Through the back window, I could see him adjusting something in the back seat. Cody's head was slumped against the passenger window. I stayed 3 cars back, following carefully. Walter's eyes found mine in his rearview mirror. He smiled knowingly and mouthed 2 words that made my heart stop. Too late. More texts flooded my phone while we drove. Old photos of Christian that Walter had edited. Cody's face seamlessly placed over Christian's. Birthdays, hospital visits, family gatherings. Each image captioned with memories of Cody's supposed previous life before his illness returned. Sarah called while I was following Walter onto the highway. She'd just seen my father-in-law at the pharmacy. The pharmacist was filling prescriptions for Christian. Sarah's voice shook as she described Walter's calm demeanor, how he'd chatted about his grandson's treatment schedule. My phone pinged with an email from my neighbor. Security footage from her doorbell camera. I pulled over briefly to watch, keeping Walter's truck in sight. The timestamp showed nightly visits going back weeks. Walter standing outside Cody's window at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Every visit starting the day after Jane's death. My mother called next, confused. Walter had contacted her asking for Cody's baby photos. He'd been very specific, wanting pictures pictures from Cody's first few months, his early developmental milestones. She'd thought it was for a surprise scrapbook. I merged back into traffic, staying close enough to track Walter but far enough to avoid confrontation. Derek called, insisting I was overreacting. A grieving man would never actually hurt Cody. I hung up on him. An old text notification appeared on my phone, one I'd missed weeks ago. Walter writing about how Christian used to love late-night drives when he couldn't sleep. The timestamp matched the night before his first recorded visit to our house. Walter's truck exited toward our old neighborhood. Another text arrived, our old house address. He was showing Christian his real home. The house was still for sale, empty for months. My work phone rang. HR confirmed someone claiming to be my father had reported a family emergency. I'd be out indefinitely, he'd said. They'd process the leave immediately, no questions asked. I called my therapist's emergency line while following Walter through familiar streets. Dr. Mills couldn't break confidentiality, but confirmed Walter had been her patient briefly. Her voice was tight when she admitted how convincing he'd been. Walter's truck pulled into our old driveway. I parked one street over and approached on foot. The basement window I'd never fixed after Cody's basketball accident was still loose. I slipped inside quietly. Walter's voice carried from upstairs. He was explaining room layouts to Cody, describing memories that weren't his. I crept up the basement stairs and into the kitchen. The house still smelled the same. I moved through rooms filled with staging furniture, following Walter's voice. In the hallway, I heard him opening doors, narrating Christian's life in each space. I needed more information before confronting him. I drove to Walter's house, parking 2 blocks away. His front door was locked, but the basement window opened easily. His workshop had been transformed. Medical equipment lined the walls. IV stands, monitors, boxes of supplies. Everything needed to recreate a treatment room. On his desk, printed emails between Walter and a funeral director. Discussions about correcting paperwork errors. Walter's really taking "it takes a village" to a whole new level here. Though I'm pretty sure this isn't what people mean when they say that about raising kids. Receipts for a burial plot, one purchased next to Christian's grave, for when Walter joined him. My sister called while I was photographing evidence. Cody's old teacher had contacted her, worried. A man claiming to be Cody's grandfather had called about re-enrolling Christian. The teacher remembered the police incident, knew something was wrong. I found more receipts. Pharmacy records showing Walter had been stockpiling Christian's old cancer medications. Forged prescriptions dating back months. Enough medication to maintain the illusion of treatment for weeks. My phone rang. Walter's psychiatric detention roommate. He explained how Walter had paid him to switch identity bracelets during Jane's funeral. The staff never noticed in the confusion. Walter had been planning every detail. I contacted 3 neighbors from our old street explaining the danger. One mentioned seeing Walter's truck yesterday. Another agreed to watch for any movement. They formed a quick phone tree. Lisa called while I was leaving Walter's house. Walter's niece had always doubted his confusion about Christian. She'd tried calling him after hearing about the escape, but he wouldn't answer. She offered to help however she could. My mother called back. She'd remembered more details about Walter's call. He'd asked specific questions about Cody's birth weight, first words, early illnesses, things only a parent would remember. She'd found it odd but touching at the time. I drove back toward the old house, coordinating with a growing network of helpers, each person adding pieces to the puzzle, each revelation showing how deep Walter's planning went. The sun was getting lower. Time was running out. I had to make my move soon, but I needed to be smart. One wrong decision could push Walter to do something desperate. Cody's safety depended on playing this perfectly. My phone vibrated with another text from Walter, a video this time. Cody sat in what looked like a makeshift hospital bed, repeating words that weren't his own. His eyes remained unfocused, fearful beneath the substance-induced haze. Walter's voice coached him through Christian's memories, birthday parties, favorite toys, moments that belonged to a dead child. I recognized the manipulation pattern immediately. The same gentle persistence Walter had used during those early woodworking lessons, now twisted into something darker. My hands trembled as I saved the video to cloud storage, building evidence while my heart broke. Mrs. Chen called with more security footage. The locksmith on Maple Street had made Walter a key to my new house 3 weeks ago. The elderly man had assumed Walter was my father, never questioned the request. My supposed safety net had holes I'd never imagined. Rebecca from work texted a warning. Someone claiming to be police had called asking about my schedule, my habits, my relationship with my son. She'd refused to provide any information, remembering my earlier warnings about Walter. At least someone had listened. I pulled into the pharmacy parking lot and uploaded everything to cloud storage. The texts, videos, photos, all of it. My phone battery was dying, but I needed this evidence preserved. Whatever happened next, people would know the truth. The police finally issued a BOLO alert for Walter's truck. The officer I spoke with warned that Walter knew the area intimately, had several hours head start. They were checking his known locations, but the possibilities seemed endless. Time kept slipping away. Cody's teacher called with information that made my blood run cold. Walter had contacted the school multiple times over the past month, asking about field trip schedules, early dismissal procedures, which doors stayed unlocked during recess. She'd thought he was planning a surprise for Cody, never imagined this outcome. I discovered Walter had been attending grief support groups at 3 different churches, not for help, for hunting. Other grandparents mentioned strange conversations, probing questions about their losses. He'd been testing boundaries, looking for vulnerabilities, practicing his approach. Christian's former teacher reached out after hearing about the situation. Walter had visited her classroom twice, asking about Christian's favorite hiding spots, secret places only his grandson would know. She'd found it sweet at the time, a grandfather unable to let go. Now she understood the darker purpose. During my next call with Walter, I forced myself to remain calm. Playing along with his delusion felt like swallowing glass, but I needed his trust. Other parents from school noticed my strategic thinking, offered their support. We were building something, a network of protection Cody should have had all along. Walter's demands escalated. He wanted Christian's baby photos within 2 hours, or Christian might get scared and run away. The threat was clear beneath his confused rambling. I agreed to everything, buying time while my helpers mobilized. Lisa revealed another piece of Walter's plan. He'd asked her months ago to testify that Cody was actually Christian if custody ever became an issue. She'd refused, thinking it was grief talking. Now she understood he'd been preparing for a legal battle that would never come. The mask slipped during our next conversation. Walter's calm facade cracked, and he screamed about me stealing his grandson twice. In the background, I heard Cody sobbing, calling for me. The sound tore through me, but I maintained my composure. Emotional reactions would only escalate the situation. Walter offered to share custody of Christian if I supported his delusion. The proposal came with disturbing details, treatment schedules, hospital visits, a complete complete recreation of Christian's final months. I rejected it carefully, without triggering his anger. Jane's sister finally admitted what others had suspected. She'd known Walter was deteriorating after Jane's death, but hadn't wanted to upset his grief process. The family's enabling had opened the door to this nightmare. Hindsight brought only regret. Bank records revealed Walter had withdrawn his entire pension the day before Jane's funeral. Every cent liquidated, converted to cash. He'd been planning to disappear with Cody from the beginning. The psychiatric detention had only delayed his timeline. I realized something crucial. Walter's support network was tiny. He'd isolated himself, confiding only in me and Lisa. His delusion required secrecy, limiting his resources. We outnumbered him, if we could coordinate effectively. Cody's phone briefly activated, sending a location ping. The abandoned cabin belonging to Christian's family, 2 hours north. I recognized it from the edited photo albums, the place where Christian had spent his last good summer. Walter was recreating everything. I called Derek, my boyfriend, who'd been skeptical about Walter from the beginning, and asked him to meet me. He arrived as I prepared to leave for the cabin. The psychiatric escape documents had finally convinced him of the danger. He wanted to call police immediately, let them handle it. I explained why we needed to stay ahead of Walter, maintain control of the situation. He agreed to drive while I coordinated our growing network. The drive became a mobile command center. Derek navigated while I fielded calls, texts, updates from our helpers, parents, neighbors, teachers, all mobilizing to help find Cody. The community response overwhelmed me, but I pushed emotion aside. Focus was everything. I refused to lie about our situation despite the embarrassment. Other parents deserved the truth about the danger their children had narrowly avoided. Honesty brought more support, more eyes watching for Walter's truck. During a speaker call, Walter contradicted himself about birthdays. He mixed up Christian's date with Cody's, and I heard my son's small voice pointing out the error. Even drugged, Cody fought to maintain his identity. The courage in that tiny act strengthened my resolve. Mrs. Chen's daughter, a pediatric nurse, confirmed my worst fears about the medications. The combination Walter had purchased could cause serious harm to a healthy child. Sedation was just the beginning. Prolonged use would bring dangerous side effects. Time pressure intensified. Lisa's calls to Walter's church friends yielded results. They were horrified to learn about his deception, offered immediate help. The support group leader apologized profusely, recognizing how they'd enabled his delusions. More eyes joined our search. A pattern emerged from their stories. Walter had approached 3 other families before focusing on Cody. Each had noticed red flags. Too many questions, boundary pushing, strange requests. Their instincts had protected them. Mine had failed. Cody's teacher transformed into a field general, mobilizing the parent phone tree. Within minutes, dozens of families knew to watch for Walter's truck along the route to the cabin. Social media groups formed, sharing information responsibly. The net was tightening. Walter's next call revealed the depth of his guilt. He rambled about experimental treatments he should have tried, chances he'd missed to save Christian. The weight of that failure had broken something fundamental in his mind. Understanding his pain didn't excuse his actions, but it explained the intensity of his delusion. The church support group leader called with an offer of help. Several members were already driving toward the cabin area, watching for Walter's truck. They felt responsible for missing the warning signs, wanted to make amends. I accepted gratefully. Gas station alerts started coming in. Parents had spread Walter's license plate number, and attendants were watching. His cash reserves wouldn't last forever. Every attempted purchase became a potential sighting. Geography worked in our favor. A cemetery worker contacted me with disturbing information. Walter had visited Christian's grave every week since the funeral, bringing identical toys and clothes to what he'd given Cody. Why is Walter mixing up basic facts about Christian now when he's been planning this for months with such detail? Something about him calling from psychiatric detention seems off. Wouldn't they monitor those calls more carefully after an escape? The replacement plan had been months in the making, methodical and patient. I instructed our growing network to watch but not approach if they spotted Walter. A confrontation might push him to violence or flight. Cody's safety required careful coordination, not heroics. Everyone understood the stakes. 7 cars of parents and neighbors converged on the cabin area. Phone calls kept everyone updated on positions, sightings, plans. The parent network had become a protective army, united by shared purpose. Walter had no idea what was closing in. His credit cards were useless. The psychiatric facility had flagged them as part of standard escape protocol. Cash was his only option, and gas stations were on alert. Every mile toward the cabin depleted his resources further. The walls were closing in. A gas station owner called with a confirmed sighting. Walter had stopped for fuel 20 minutes ago. Cody was sleeping in the truck, his shaved head visible through the window. The owner noted the license plate, direction of travel. We were close. School parents created a Facebook group to coordinate support. Previous doubters apologized publicly, offered whatever help I needed. The community that had once envied my perfect situation now understood the nightmare beneath. Vindication brought no satisfaction. Dashcam footage from a helpful trucker showed Walter's truck turning onto the cabin access road 40 minutes ago. The timestamp confirmed our timeline. He was there, isolated with my son. The final approach required perfect execution. Sunset was approaching. The isolated cabin would be dark soon, and I remembered Walter's stories about Christian's fear of dying in darkness. That psychological trigger worried me. We needed to reach them before nightfall added another layer of trauma. Lisa finally reached Walter by phone. His break from reality was complete. He was setting up Christian's treatment room, preparing for the next phase of his delusion. She kept him talking while relaying information to me. The situation inside sounded increasingly unstable. I understood with crystal clarity that I might have to physically fight Walter to save my son. The thought of violence made me sick, but maternal instinct overrode everything else. Whatever it took, Cody was coming home. Instead of panicking, I directed our parent network with military precision. 3 cars would block the cabin's exit roads. Others would maintain perimeter watch. We'd create a controlled environment for whatever came next. Leadership felt strange but necessary. Walter's former co-workers called with additional context. His retirement hadn't been voluntary. Concerning behavior had forced the issue. Warning signs everyone had missed or dismissed. The pattern of escalation stretched back further than anyone realized. Multiple witnesses confirmed Walter's truck at the cabin. Through windows, they could see Cody looking drowsy but unharmed. Relief mixed with urgency. We had visual confirmation but needed to act before the situation deteriorated further. The parent network positioned cars strategically along the single access road. If Walter tried to flee, he'd find no escape route. But everyone maintained safe distances, avoiding detection. We'd trapped him without his knowledge. Another photo arrived from Walter. Cody wearing a hospital gown, hooked to a fake IV setup Walter had created. The image was disturbing, but I noticed noticed important details. The IV wasn't actually inserted, just taped to look convincing. Walter's delusion had limits. I responded calmly to his text, writing that Christian looked peaceful. The words tasted like poison, but they prevented Walter from panicking. Keeping him calm meant keeping Cody safe. Every interaction required careful calculation. The psychiatric facility director called with information about Walter's escape. During the chaos of Jane's funeral arrangements, shift changes had created confusion. Walter had exploited every weakness, planned every detail. They were reviewing all protocols, but accountability wouldn't help us now. 15 cars now surrounded the cabin area at safe distances. The parent network had mobilized beyond my wildest expectations. Walter thought he was isolated with his delusion. Instead, he was surrounded by people determined to save Cody. I asked 3 parent volunteers to position themselves near the cabin's exits, not to confront, just to ensure Walter couldn't slip away if spooked. They understood the delicate balance required. Everyone waited for my signal. The confession texts I'd saved to cloud storage were shared with key parents. They needed to understand what we were dealing with. The evidence was undeniable, the pattern clear. Any lingering doubts evaporated. Walter opened the cabin door briefly, saw the assembled cars in the distance, and quickly retreated inside with Cody. He'd realized something was wrong. The standoff had begun. Time for careful action. Lisa put her phone on speaker, letting everyone hear Walter's voice. He was calling Cody Christian, discussing treatment schedules, completely lost in his delusion. The audio evidence streamed live to dozens of witnesses. Documentation continued even in crisis. My meticulous record-keeping over the months now served its purpose. Every text, every incident, every escalation was preserved in the cloud. The pattern was undeniable, the progression clear. My concerns had been valid from the beginning. A parent with EMT training assessed the situation based on visible symptoms. Cody appeared sedated but not in immediate medical danger. The medications Walter had given him were concerning, but not immediately life-threatening. We had a window to act carefully. The assembled parents reached unanimous agreement. Walter had to be stopped, but safely. No one wanted violence around Cody. The community that had once dismissed my concerns now stood ready to help. Unity born from understanding. Through the cabin window, we saw Walter notice the surrounding presence. He quickly closed all curtains while telling Cody they would wait until the people left. My son's voice, weak but clear, asked for his mom. The sound strengthened everyone's resolve. When a few parents moved closer to establish exit coverage, Walter barricaded the door. He was scared now, cornered with his delusion. The situation required delicate handling. One wrong move could trigger panic. 2 parents were already on the phone with 911 dispatch, providing the cabin's location and situation details. I begged for a few minutes to try talking Walter out peacefully. Police intervention might escalate dangerously. They agreed to brief delay. I approached the cabin alone while others maintained their positions. Maternal instinct overrode personal safety. Whatever happened next, I would face it directly. The community watched, ready to support but respecting my need to lead. Rather than confronting Walter at the barricaded door, I circled the cabin looking for alternatives. An unlocked window on the east side offered quiet entry. I slipped inside while Walter remained focused on the front door. His voice carried from the main room. He was trying to convince Cody to swallow pills, describing them as special medicine that would help him remember being happy. The manipulation made my skin crawl, but I moved carefully, avoiding detection until the right moment. I crept through the cabin's dim hallway, each footstep calculated to avoid creaking boards. The makeshift hospital room Walter had created came into view through a doorway. Medical supplies arranged on a folding table, vitamin bottles lined up like soldiers. My son sat on a camping cot, his shaved head making him look smaller, more vulnerable. Walter held a handful of pills, explaining they were Christian's special vitamins that made him strong during treatment. Cody's glazed eyes found mine over Walter's shoulder. His mouth formed a silent word, Mom. The recognition in that moment gave me strength. I stepped into the room. Walter spun around, clutching the pills tighter. His face cycled through emotions, surprise, anger, then a strange calm. He insisted Christian needed his treatment, that I was interrupting something important. My response came out steady despite my racing heart. I told him that wasn't Christian. Christian was gone. The words hung in the air between us like a physical barrier. Walter's composure cracked. He revealed what had been eating at him for over a year. He'd let Christian die. The treatments had been worse than the cancer, and he'd agreed to stop them. His guilt had consumed him, twisted his grief into this dangerous delusion. Movement at the window caught my eye. Lisa's face appeared, her voice carrying through the glass. She called out that Christian forgave him, that her cousin wouldn't want this. Walter froze at her words, the pills trembling in his hand. The moment stretched. I could rush forward, grab Cody, risk a physical confrontation, or I could keep talking, appeal to whatever remained of the man who'd once genuinely cared for my son. The choice felt impossible. I spoke about Christian's real legacy, how he'd want other children to be happy, to live their own lives, how hurting Cody would dishonor Christian's memory. The words seemed to penetrate Walter's fog. His shoulders began shaking. The pills scattered across the floor as he sank to his knees, sobbing. He clutched at Cody, calling him Christian one more time. My son's weak voice corrected him. His name was Cody. Walter reached for my son again, desperation in his movements. I stepped between them, pulling Cody against me. His small body felt fragile but warm, alive. Walter begged me not to take him again, but his resistance was verbal, not physical. I lifted Cody, his arms wrapping weakly around my neck. We moved toward the door while Walter remained on the floor, surrounded by his delusion's debris. The assembled parents maintained respectful distance as we emerged. Several parents recorded on their phones, not for social media drama, but for evidence. The parent network's coordination skills put military operations to shame. If the PTA ran the world, we'd probably have flying cars by now, instead of just really organized bake sales. The documentation would matter later. Walter seemed almost relieved as I carried Cody toward the waiting ambulance. Police officers approached the cabin carefully. They'd been briefed on Walter's mental state, understood this wasn't a typical criminal situation. Their gentle handling showed professionalism and compassion. Walter emerged willingly, looking older than his years. As officers guided him to their vehicle, he turned back toward the ambulance. His whispered goodbye to Christian carried on the evening air. The finality in those words suggested acceptance. The ambulance ride blurred together. EMTs checked Cody's vitals while I held his hand, pushing aside my anger to be the calm presence he needed. His questions came in fragments. Was he sick? Where was Grandpa Walter? Why did his head feel funny? I answered simply, honestly, without overwhelming him. The medications would wear off. He was safe. We were going to the hospital to make sure he was okay. My voice remained steady even as my mind raced through everything that had happened. The hospital's pediatric ward had been alerted. Nurses who'd heard about the situation through the parent network were ready. Cody's examination was thorough but gentle. Blood tests confirmed the sedatives in his system, but no lasting damage. Derek arrived as they moved Cody to an observation room. His earlier dismissal of my concerns had evaporated completely. He sat quietly, letting me take the lead, understanding his role was support, not control. Parents from school created a rotation for hospital visits. Someone was always in the waiting room, ready to help. Meals appeared without being asked for. Phone chargers materialized when needed. The community support was overwhelming but welcome. Lisa came by with updates on Walter. He'd been transferred to a secure psychiatric facility, different from his previous placement. The evaluation process would be extensive. She'd already started working with authorities to ensure proper treatment this time. Cody slept fitfully that first night. I dozed in the chair beside his bed, waking each time he stirred. His mumbled words mixed reality with Walter's imposed memories. The psychological untangling would take time. By morning, the sedatives had mostly cleared his system. Cody's first coherent question was about his hair. I explained gently that it would grow back, that looking different didn't change who he was inside. He touched his scalp thoughtfully. The child psychologist arrived after breakfast. Dr. Martinez specialized in trauma and memory confusion. Her initial assessment was encouraging. Cody's core identity remained intact despite Walter's manipulation. The imposed memories were surface level, not deeply rooted. Hospital discharge came after 48 hours of observation. Cody walked out on his own, wearing a baseball cap one of the parents had brought. He held my hand tightly but managed a small wave to the nurses. Our new apartment felt different when we returned, safer somehow, knowing the community that surrounded us. Mrs. Chen had organized a subtle security upgrade. New locks, doorbell camera, neighborhood watch schedule, protection without paranoia. Cody's therapy sessions started immediately, 3 times a week at first, focusing on separating real memories from imposed ones. Dr. Martinez used art therapy, letting Cody draw his experiences. The pictures showed confusion gradually giving way to clarity. School presented challenges. Cody's teacher created a modified schedule, allowing breaks when needed. His classmates had been prepared appropriately. They knew he'd been sick, needed time to feel better. Kids can be surprisingly understanding when adults frame things correctly. The legal proceedings moved forward without my direct involvement. Prosecutors built their case using the extensive documentation I'd provided. Walter's psychiatric evaluation confirmed his break from reality. Criminal charges were pursued alongside mandatory treatment. I returned to work part-time after 2 weeks. My supervisor had held my position, understanding the extraordinary circumstances. Colleagues who'd once seemed distant now checked in regularly. Crisis had revealed unexpected allies. Cody's hair grew back slowly, darker than before. He studied himself in mirrors, touching the short strands. One morning, he announced he liked it better this way. New hair for his new start, he said. Parent-teacher conferences took on different meaning. Educators who'd witnessed the community's response to Walter's actions now watched for warning signs more carefully. Policies were quietly updated. Background checks became more thorough. Walter's facility sent periodic updates through official channels. His treatment was progressing. He'd accepted Christian's death, understood his actions toward Cody. The medications helped, but the work was slow. 3 months passed. Cody's therapy dropped to twice weekly. His drawings showed more colors, fewer dark spaces. He'd stopped mentioning Christian's memories entirely. Dr. Martinez called it remarkable progress. I started dating Derek officially. We'd moved slowly, letting Cody set the pace for acceptance. Their relationship built on shared activities, building models, playing catch, homework help, normal things that created real memories. The adoption papers arrived on a Tuesday. Derek had filed them quietly, waiting for the right moment. Cody read them carefully, understanding what they meant. His question was simple. Would he still be Cody? Always, we assured him. School events felt different now. Parents who'd once envied my village understood the cost of misplaced trust. They watched their own children more carefully, but without paranoia. Vigilance balanced with allowing kids to be kids. Cody's 9th birthday approached. He requested a small party, just close friends and family. No surprises, no unexpected guests. We honored his need for control over his environment. Healing meant respecting his boundaries. The birdhouse he'd built with Walter still sat in our garage. One day, Cody asked to see it. He studied the construction, running his fingers over the wood. Then he asked if we could donate it to the park. Let birds use it as intended. Lisa visited monthly, maintaining connection without pressure. She'd become part of our extended family, proof that not all links to that difficult time were harmful. Her presence helped Cody understand that caring for someone didn't mean accepting their harmful actions. 6 months after the cabin, I watched Cody at the park. He played freely with other children, no longer looking over his shoulder. His laughter came easily. The wariness had faded, replaced by age-appropriate joy. The art teacher at school noticed Cody's talent. His drawings showed real skill, developed during therapy, but now pursued for pleasure. She encouraged him gently, careful not to push. His choice to continue came naturally. Legal proceedings concluded without fanfare. Walter received treatment instead of traditional incarceration. The system had worked as intended, balancing justice with mental health needs. I felt no satisfaction, just relief that it was over. Derek's adoption finalized on a Thursday morning. The judge, aware of our history, kept proceedings simple. Cody wore his best clothes, standing tall as he became officially what he'd already become emotionally, Derek's son. That evening, we had dinner as a legal family for the first time. Nothing fancy, just pizza and conversation. Cody talked about school, friends, his art project, normal 9-year-old concerns. The extraordinary had become ordinary again. I found myself thinking about Walter less frequently. The anger had faded, replaced by something harder to define. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. Grief could break people in dangerous ways. Recognizing that didn't excuse his actions, but explained them. Cody's teacher reported excellent progress at year's end. His grades reflected his natural intelligence, no longer hindered by trauma. He'd made friends, real ones who knew nothing about the previous year's events. Fresh starts were possible. Summer arrived with new possibilities. Cody asked about camp, wanting to try overnight programs. We researched carefully, finding one with excellent security and counselor training. His excitement outweighed our anxiety. The first letter from camp made me cry. Cody wrote about swimming, hiking, making friendship bracelets, normal kid experiences he'd missed during the Walter situation. His counselor added a note. He was thriving. Back-to-school shopping felt like a celebration. Cody picked out supplies with enthusiasm, excited about 4th grade. His hair had grown out completely, styled the way he chose. External changes reflecting internal healing. Parent network meetings continued monthly. What had formed in crisis evolved into genuine community support. We shared resources, watched out for each other's children, maintained the vigilance that had saved Cody. The anniversary of the cabin incident passed quietly. quietly. Cody didn't mention it, focused on current activities. Dr. Martinez had prepared us. Some dates might trigger memories, others would pass unnoticed. We followed his lead. Walter's niece sent a final letter. He'd stabilized completely, accepting Christian's death and his inappropriate actions. He'd asked her to apologize, to ensure we knew he understood the harm he'd caused. The letter went into our filing cabinet, acknowledged but not dwelt upon. I realized one evening that entire days passed without thinking about those events. Life had filled the spaces trauma once occupied. Cody did homework at the kitchen table while Derek cooked dinner. Simple domesticity that felt like victory. The school's winter concert approached. Cody had joined choir, discovering a singing voice that surprised everyone. He practiced enthusiastically, teaching Derek the harmonies. Their rehearsals filled our home with music. Concert night arrived clear and cold. Cody stood with his classmates, wearing the required white shirt and dark pants. His voice rose with the others, pure and confident. In the audience, Derek reached for my hand. After the concert, families mingled in the cafeteria. Parents who'd formed our protective network chatted easily. Our shared history had created lasting bonds. Cody moved between groups, accepting congratulations with grace. That night, tucking Cody into bed, he mentioned Walter for the first time in months, not with fear or confusion, but simple curiosity about whether he was okay. I answered honestly. Walter was getting help, learning to cope with his grief properly. Cody nodded, satisfied with the answer. He was glad Walter was getting help, he said. Then he asked about tomorrow's plans, moving forward as children do. The past acknowledged, but not defining his future. I stood in his doorway, watching him settle into sleep, his breathing steadied, peaceful, and untroubled. The nightmares were rare now, replaced by dreams of normal childhood adventures. Derek found me there, wrapped his arms around me. We'd built something stronger than what we'd lost. A family forged through trial, but defined by love. Cody knew exactly who he was. Not Christian, never Christian, but Cody, himself, complete and cherished. The journey from that terrifying day at school to this quiet evening had been long. Healing happened in increments, through therapy and time and community support. We'd learned vigilance without paranoia, trust with verification. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, fourth grade math and friendship dramas and growing pains, normal problems we'd face together. The extraordinary had taught us to treasure the ordinary. I closed Cody's door softly, leaving it cracked as he preferred. Down the hall, our bedroom waited. Derek was already planning weekend activities, consulting the calendar. Life moved forward, as it always does. The birdhouse in the park had weathered its first year. Cody pointed it out sometimes during our walks, watching birds come and go. Something beautiful salvaged from difficult memories. Creation, outlasting destruction. Our story wasn't unique in its pain, but in its resolution. A community that rallied, a child who healed, a family that emerged stronger. No headlines or fame, just quiet triumph over trauma. In the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thanks for hanging out while I shared all my reactions today. Hope my random observations made you smile at least once. Catch you next time.